Is it even going to start?
It's
Yeah, there it
we're
goes.
live.
All right, we are live. Appreciate everybody tuning in, guys. It's Stone Guy 223, and hopefully this is coming in nice and clear. We've had some issues with YouTube last day or so, so we'll see. Hopefully it renders, and we'll be able to listen to this, and everybody out there will be able to hear it clearly. So, real quick, from my left, we've got the Glock Guru.
Hey, thanks for the invite.
Absolutely. Then we've got Foos.
Welcome, welcome.
Then we've got Gun Websites.
Hey, thanks for the invite.
Absolutely. And the Yankee Marshal. Sliding in. Yeah. 1%. See, unlike Yankee, I allow.
I'm a 10%er, not a 1%.
That's it. But anyway, so tonight I wanted to talk a little bit about long range shooting. We did the Tac Daddy show. They had done some, just went to a long range course, and that's kind of what got me thinking about long range shooting in general. Something I enjoyed very much, and something we haven't talked about in a while. So I was like, well, hell, this would be a good time to strike up a conversation and just kind of get some ideas and some thoughts of how you set your rifle up and different aspects of long range shooting. So anyway, I'm gonna mute you real quick. Sorry, killing me. I guess the first thing we could do, maybe if you know any of us on the panel here. Yeah, I guess we could do that. Like, what do you consider long range? Like, what's long range to you? Jump in.
Well, the longest range around here that is affordable goes out to 230 yards. We do have a 1,000-yard range, but it's like $40 an hour to shoot there. So we normally don't. I normally don't go there.
Damn, yeah, that's expensive.
Yeah. So
I'm at the other end of the spectrum because having vision that is poorer every day and being a fan of iron sights and not scopes, anything over 50 yards to me is like long range shooting.
I think 500 yards is starting long range.
Yeah, see, that's kind of my break point, I guess. You know, what I consider long. You know, 400 or 500 yards is what I consider long range. Where you really start to have to take into account way more variables, you know, with equipment and ballistics and calibers and, you know, bullet drop and everything at those distances, you know, say again?
Oh, sorry. Were you asking what we think long range is or how we define it, or were you asking what the ranges we shoot at are?
Well, I guess kind of a mix of both. I guess, you know, just from a personal view, what do you consider to be long range? And then, yeah, if you could spin off of that, say what's the longest you've ever shot.
I'd agree more with Ralph then. I think 1,000 range plus is long range to me. I think 300 to 500 is just rifle range.
Right.
And shorter than that would be short, I suppose. But, I mean, I don't always get to shoot at 1,000 plus, but there are ranges like that, and that's what I would consider definitely long range. That's where you really need to know your stuff.
And really, I think it's per caliber, because if you have a really good match 22, 200 yards is good because that does carry, so you have to do win and you have to do drop and stuff like that.
Oh, Jesus, at 200 yards with you're talking 22 long rifle?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, dude, you're aiming 10 feet over the target.
Exactly. So it's relative to caliber.
Well, yeah, I guess I see your point there. Yeah, I mean, absolutely, and I think that's, yeah, you could define it in that manner because.
Well, that's any handgun caliber or any.
Right. Yeah, I guess that's kind of splitting hairs. You just
major rifle calibers.
Right. I'm thinking major rifle calibers. You know.
Yeah. 500, 600, stuff like that. That's when I start considering that long range.
you know, because even let's say just if you're out plinking 7.62 by 39, you know, most people shoot those out of an AK platform or AK rifle, and 300 yards, you're still pretty flat, pretty decent. You get beyond 300, and that bullet takes a significant drop.
Here's where I draw the line. Where you need a scope. You know, you should be able to get consistent hits on irons out to 300-400.
Oh, now shit. If you go where you need a scope, that would be about 75 yards for me because I can't see shit. Yeah, honestly, that's when you're talking IPSC size target. I mean, in all honesty, you know, and I'm only 40 years old, and I could see iron sights to about 150. You know, where I could see,
what I was saying
take
earlier.
that shot.
If you're hitting 100 yards, I'm like, okay, I'm trying to shoot towards the edge of the fuzzy thing, or to the center of the fuzzy thing.
Right.
I can't see shit at that range.
Have you guys ever heard of the F-class long-range shooting competition? It's just they shoot at 1,000 generally. That's about what they shoot at. So if anyone's looking at like long-range competitions, then look into F-class competitions and see what kind of stuff they're running. If you want to look at what guys run at 1,000, basically, so give you an idea.
Well,
The furthest I've shot's 1,200, but I want to shoot a mile. I really wanted to shoot a mile last year. I didn't get a chance to.
now the 1,200 yard, what caliber were you using there?
6.5.
Okay, that's a nice flat shooting round.
300 or 308 is generally.
308's actually a horrible round.
Well, it's good out to about 800. You know, it's good out to about 800, maybe 1,000 consistently. Not use with the right stuff, but that's most guys don't go beyond that. They're like 6.5, 7mm maybe, 300 Win Mag. You know, but 308. Unless you're running like 168 grain Sierra Match bullets, they really start to break up after they come back out of the sound barrier. And
right, and they start to get that
wobble like
like a son of a bitch once it breaks once it goes below supersonic. And you know, like when I had Peter Palma on the chat a few months back, and I hopefully I don't misspeak. From what I can recall, I remember him saying that and for those of you that don't know who he is, he's a Marine Scout sniper, and so he said that 308 is really a horrible round for that application, but it's just because there's so much duplicity in that caliber amongst all the different weapon systems in the military that it was kind of adapted into the sniper rifle role. And so you see a lot more push in our military for the 300 Win Mag and other calibers that aren't as common because they're much better ballistically, especially for a long range precision role. And he explained some different things, and that was one of them about dropping below that supersonic, that it just gets real unstable, and some other things that and it wasn't until talking with him on that chat that I kind of did some more of my own research, and not that I didn't believe him, but just reading it in black and white from different sources, besides himself was kind of solidified it for me. But so I guess that just goes to show you, with just the 6 people we have on this chat, all of us have varying opinions on what long distance is. Like what qualifies long distance. So I guess that's going to be relative to the shooter. So real quick, so we know, Dave, you've got 1,200 yards, and then Yankee here. What's the longest you've ever shot? See there, I don't have my camera on.
Well, he shows a picture.
I would say the longest range I've ever shot at, shooting at steel targets, was, I want to say it was 500 yards, but it might have been 600 yards.
All right, Foose, what about you?
Went to my brother's once, and they have a 600-yard, and I shot and missed a bunch. But the longest I was connecting was 500.
And G, what's the longest shot you've taken?
Well, we usually shoot at a range here that's 2, 3, 4, and 500 yards or meters. I forget. And but I'm sure that it's probably at some exposition or some event. I know I've shot 1,000 yards plus before, but I honestly don't remember what actual number. But that's just, sitting down on the rifle, shooting a few rounds, and then walking away. I don't know if people consider that actually going out and shooting,
right,
good at it or anything.
And we've had Street Fighter join us. So what's the longest shot you've taken?
900. Excuse me, 900 meters. I don't know how many yards that is. I'm sorry. I'm not Canadian. I swear to God.
I did the math on Google. It's 984 yards.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, that was as long as the range that we were at went. So that was about as long as I ever shot.
Well, that's a hell. That's good distance. That's.
Well, we also had I had access to the tools to do it, so makes it easy if you have the right tools for the job.
There's a big YouTube channel called Gunworks. These guys they build pretty high-end rifle systems, and they've also built their own rangefinder and optic that cross-reference each other, and so they really built this whole package of rifle, rangefinder, and optic that once you figure out how to use it, really makes it idiot-proof. And still using your mind and using the fundamentals and the mechanics of shooting versus something like they just put in the side chat versus something like the Tracking Point, that came out I think a couple years ago, and that is a system that really does everything for you, locks on target, and does not even allow you to pull the trigger until you are on target. So a Tracking Point to me is not a true measure of long distance shooting.
You said exactly what I was about to say. Tracking Point, I don't consider that. I still consider it shooting, but I don't consider it long distance.
No, I think it's and it's cost prohibitive for one. It's like $10,000 for the system, and it's to me it's a joke. It's cheating. It takes the fun out of.
Whoa.
At that point, it's like shooting a guided missile. Until you have a lock, it's not going to let you fire the missile, and it's like doing all the work for you. So you pretty much have to really f up and not hit target.
Now what's wrong, Glock Guru? You seem to get a little animated there. You didn't like the cheating comment? Did we lose him?
I don't hear anything.
Yeah, we must have lost the Glock Guru, but he was having mic problems earlier. But yeah, honestly, I think it is. Some people are like, "Oh, it's the evolution of firearms. Embrace it." It's technology that our firearms industry is utilizing and all that bullshit. But personally, I think it's taken the fun out of it.
Yep. It's taken the human skill out of hitting a target at a long range. We still need the people that have that skill. It comes back to machining or gunsmithing or something like that. If machines are doing it all, you don't have that craftsman anymore. And I think as a society, we actually lose something whenever we lose that first-hand knowledge of creating something with your own hands. Same as shooting. I think we lose something if we just start letting computers basically take the shot for us.
Yeah, like I said, it's like a guided missile.
Absolutely.
Right. I'm gonna try to look at the questions here in gun channels and YouTube. I know I just came across one that was asking what we would consider the best caliber to shoot long range, 500 plus. And I think maybe 500. I would probably still say 308, maybe a 7mm.
I mean, 500. I mean, you have a little bit of bullet drop and stuff like that. 308's fine. 7mm fine. Your 6.5 Grendels and stuff would be perfect. Heck, even a 223, you could still hit there reliably at 500.
Oh yeah. I shoot 500 with my AR all the time. We've got a gong, big steel gong set up at 500, and you can, throw them in there all day long.
Yeah, and as far as extreme long range, I'd go 338 Lapua. If you could afford it and everything, I would do that. And
I've talked to snipers that would take that 338 even over a 50 cal.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 50 is like...
50 sucks balls, dude.
Yeah, carrying that shit is terrible. It's fucking horrible.
And they're still using just ball rounds, aren't they?
There's a bunch of 50
There's a bunch of rounds.
Right, but mostly it's just ball rounds for anti-personnel. It's not.
He's not supposed to be personnel.
I meant like machine gun ammo. It's not nothing that's highly precise.
No, I know guys that reload 50.
No, I'm talking about military.
No, they're military rounds issued to snipers for the 50 are loaded at the armory for that rifle.
Yeah.
Okay, I knew they do that for other sniper rifles. I wasn't sure if they did that for 50 as well.
Yeah, they have dedicated ammo just for the Barrett.
Okay. But yeah, 338 Lapua, do it. I know Savage has a cheapish 338 that I've heard pretty good things about.
I've shot it. It's a great gun. It's cheapish. It's $4,500.
For a Lapua, that's cheap.
Right, and it's a great gun.
What about 300 Win Mag?
300 Win Mag, I think, is also a fantastic round. There's
maybe a little more cost effective too, if you're on a budget and you want to shoot long distances.
Well, that's my understanding as far as the Marine side goes. That's what they're switching to, is the 300 Win Mag. Especially, they've been able to get there's an AR rifle system that will shoot 300 Win Mag. In a semi-auto rifle, so they're able to have modularity in the AR platform with this 300 Win Mag, and they're getting just as precise as a bolt gun out of
whenever you reload for it, you can use the same projectiles as your 308 that you already have.
Do you know the model name of that rifle, or?
I don't right off. I know Tim from the Military Arms Channel did a video on it.
You talking about the 110 BA? You're talking about the 338 Savage?
No, it's is that an AR?
Oh, you're talking about the Nemo from the Nemo Arms Omen?
The one that shoots, it's three barrels. three.
You're talking about the Omen rifle from Nemo.
Okay,
Yes,
yeah.
that's the AR style. And yeah, I was talking about that Savage for the 338.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, for the 338 it was Savage. So the cool thing is we've kind of got on some good things here. I guess first let's talk about when we were talking about loading. Having the armory for military that load specific for that rifle, or that's one thing I wanted to. When I said setting up your rifle, it's important, I think, for people to understand, as you get into long range shooting, every gun, even the same gun, is going to have different harmonics in that barrel and different, I from personal experience have had Remington 700 police rifles they're identical, but mine likes the 150 grain VMAX, and a buddy likes the 168s. And so you've gotta shoot your rifle with a lot of different ammo until you find the best ammo for that rifle.
Yep, and with that, what I'm doing is I went out and I bought a case of 7.62 by 51, and I'm just gonna shoot through that case through my Remington 700 until I get better, until the groups come down to a size every time. Let's say with that ammo it's a 2 MOA gun. If I get down to 2 MOA every time I shoot it, then I'm going to start reloading to it and try to fine tune what the gun likes.
Right,
because
exactly.
In long range precision, the gun is going to shoot better than 95% of the people.
Absolutely.
So you have
and
to,
especially if you have the option of reloading like yourself, as someone that reloads, that's going to be even better, where you can actually, because the projectiles are going to be, relatively, it'll have continuity amongst the projectiles. So your powder charges are going to be, the biggest variable.
Well, no, you have a whole bunch of different types of projectiles too. I have 4 different types of projectiles up there that I'm going to load for it. It goes anywhere from I think I have 168, a couple 170s, and then I even have a 208 grain bullet that I'm going to try.
I want to be clear that 7.62 by 51 and 308 are not the same thing.
That is true. That is very true.
So anyone thinking that they're going to run that in their 308 rifle and be able to build numbers off of it?
No, absolutely. And I'll tell you that from personal experience, not knowing or finding out the hard way is I have that Remington 700, but I bought also a Marlin. I think it's the X93 or something. It's a budget rifle. It was about $400. It does have an AccuTrigger, full synthetic. I got it for, more or less a hunting / range gun, something for my son to shoot as well. But anyway, that gun's a 308, and I had the Magtech, the 7.62 by 51, military cartridges, and this thing it's got a jewel bolt, super smooth. I mean, it's a fantastic gun for the money. Butter smooth with 308 shells. I put that 7.62 by 51 in there, and the first time I shot it, I had to bang my fucking bolt open because it had swelled so much that I almost couldn't get it open. And I talked to one of my gunsmiths, and if you look close between a 7.62 by 51 and a 308, the neck's a little different, the shoulder's a little different.
Headspace is different.
Yeah, I almost fucked my gun. Thank God I quit after that one shot once I realized how bad it stuck my bolt. So yeah, that's good to put out there for people. If you buy 308, don't buy 51 ammo.
my Remington 700 is eating both of them without a hitch.
What is it chambered for?
308.
On your bolt guns, I mean, a lot of them you might not necessarily have as big of a problem. There's a lower pressure in the 7.62 by 51.
Correct.
Right. It's opposite of the 5.56 223.
The problem is that generally military ammo or cases have a thicker webbing on them, so
Yeah,
the dimensions are
exactly.
different. And if you have
Exactly. That was the difference when you hold the, like in my case, you could see the difference. I mean, if you put a caliper to them, you could definitely see the difference. But
a go no go gauge for them are different. If you guys are familiar with those,
right,
so
yeah,
when they're
checking your headspace. So anyway, that's something for people to take away. Definitely shoot some different ammo. Don't buy a gun. Buy a box of ammo, and when you're not grouping sub-MOA, don't get pissed off and think it's your gun. Shoot some different ammo. Try some different loads, some different grain weights, and you'd be amazed. I was amazed at how much difference, at keeping everything the same and just switching a bullet makes in that weapon system.
Not only that, but get down on your damn belly and shoot for groups. You're going to be a lot stabler, a lot more stable, and you'll get tighter groups.
Absolutely, shooting prone on something, and being well supported, and I'd like to. Mr. Guns and Gear is kind of a friend, and he had done a video testing the accuracy of something, and I made a comment to him. I said, "Well, man, you don't even have a damn. You're not even on a bench rest. You're not on anything." I said that you're not really going to get a true test of accuracy. And he goes, "Dan, you're right." And so, sure enough, the next video, he had a lead sled, and just something. You don't have to have necessarily locked into a sled. If you really are trying to, I recommend that when you're zeroing your rifle. If you're going to zero your rifle, by all means, if you can find someone that's got a lead sled, you can lock that sucker in, and really the only mechanic involved is you tapping that trigger. That's going to be your best setup for zeroing your rifle. And once you know your rifle's zeroed, well, then you can take that lead sled out of the equation and get more into your body mechanics, because once you know your rifle's zeroed, and you go back to just shooting off a bag or sandbag or something like that, and your groups aren't as good as they were when you're on that sled, then it's just you as the shooter, or your setup, or your body position, different things that make a ton of difference.
Speaking of body position, especially like when you're prone, make sure your body's directly behind it. Make sure that you can sit there and be looking down your scope, close your eyes, and then be able to open your eyes again and still be on target, that your body hasn't moved or anything like that.
Absolutely. Another big thing, people, and this, for someone that's really OCD, this I still have an issue with this, trying to do this, but a lot of people don't realize some of the best snipers in the world will tell you to shoot dirty, or to not to clean your bore. I know guys that won't clean for 150, 200 rounds.
way more than
Oh, it's way more than that. Was it 8541 Tactical? He says that after he cleans a barrel, he won't go for groups until he gets about 70 to 100 rounds down it, and then he won't clean it up to about 800 rounds.
40
Oh,
is
wow.
40 is
Yes,
generally the 40, 50 shots generally. Fouls the barrel enough to the point that it's consistent, so that each round going down doesn't catch on the little micro groove that you just exposed whenever you were cleaning it. So the lead fills in, or whatever, the copper or whatever fills in, and creates a nice smooth action, smooth bed for the rest going in. I don't know I don't know if you did like a slip and slide where you put the soap down. The first guy's probably gonna have the hardest, and then as the soap spreads out, the next one's gonna be easier and easier and easier as more people use it. It's the same kind of thing.
Also, extreme long range is the different type. Like for your loaders, if you go to a Hornady and then a Sierra and you keep jumping, well, the copper is made of slightly different materials, different ratios. So that will even cause issues. You need to get the old, let's say been shooting Hornady and you want to switch to a Sierra. The first several rounds down it, don't shoot for accuracy. Let that barrel get used to that copper, and then start going down it.
Right, exactly. So that's another thing, kind of a bullet point, I guess, if we're keeping track, or anybody that watches this, if you're keeping track, that's kind of another bullet point. Just definitely, try to get over the old adage of clean your gun after every shot or after every range trip when it comes to these, highly accurate long range guns. You want to keep them fouled up a little bit, and that's
What about protecting against corrosion? If you're in like how do you balance cleaning versus like stopping your bore from rusting?
The guys I know, they drop a couple drops of oil on the back of their bore snake, and while the rifle's hot, like at the last shot that they take, while the carbon's still hot, they run the bore snake through once, and it pulls the big carbon out, and the drops of the oil on the back of the bore snake will coat their barrel enough that they consider that to be good to go.
I was looking at like there were like a bunch of Swedish Mausers that have been converted by the military for civilian target shooting in Sweden. I was going through a bunch of them trying to pick out one that I liked the best, and like almost every one of them had like like a little bit of frost down the bore, and I was like trying to figure out why the fuck are all these rifles like, I mean, why do they have rusty bores? And I mean, not it wasn't crazy. It wasn't anything like I wouldn't be ashamed to own any of them. I was just trying to find the best one, and I guess I asked, and that was the exact reason that Dave brought up was why, because they don't clean them, because they don't want to take out the fouling, because they want to keep. But I was wondering, like, is there a balance that you can keep between not messing shit up and also keeping it maintained?
What I do is as soon as I get home, I stick it in the gun safe with a goldenrod in it, and I open the bolt. So if there is anything, air could get in there and dry it out, and I don't put anything on my bores. I just keep it in a real dry climate. Now, if I'm shooting and it's raining, yeah, I will go ahead and clean it. I will treat it because that is more moisture than I'm wanting on it.
So, but you're saying, Dave, basically you're not so much cleaning it as they're just kind of like taking out, they're running one pass through it just to get a little bit of something in there.
Just all the big chunks of the way it was explained to me, all the big chunks of carbon. They just do one pass through it just to make sure they get the big stuff out, and it puts a little layer of lube down on it, but.
Or maybe just run a patch with a little bit of oil.
You could.
Yeah.
The majority of these guys. Here's the other side of this. Okay, so we're talking about, part of us are talking about guns that we're going to take home and they're going to sit in a safe and all this stuff or whatever. But if you're talking about being overseas, in a sandy environment, those guys never lube their rifles.
It doesn't matter at that point. I know about that.
Not only that, but it attracts sand. So like. Even like the machine guns, the guys I know that run those, like they clean them and then they store them dry, and then right before they go out, they dump lube on them because that will attract sand otherwise.
I know. I see that environment I understood, but like I don't live in a desert environment anymore. I'm back home, and what I learned in the Army doesn't necessarily work for living where I live, where it's damp as hell all the time. And so now, and that was. Something I always wondered was, what do I, how do you how do I keep rust out of my bore, basically?
Have
Without,
you ever seen the Remington little green bullets that are supposed to be? You put them in. It's almost like a blank.
I've
and
seen them
it's-
for shotguns,
Yeah, they make them for.
rifles.
Yeah, they make them for rifles. I have them for rifles. I don't really run them, but if I really had a concern, it would be pretty cheap insurance just to throw in the gun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and so that's something, like I said, to be aware of. Another big thing, like you said, we've been talking about the shooting the different rounds. Well, the the biggest thing I think you can do that's going to be advantageous for your long range, not only long range shooting, but in the long, duration of your career, so to speak, in shooting long distances, is to make some type of book, if you will,
Dope chart?
type of ledger or dope chart, something that you can keep track of. Now for guys that reload, this is way easier for them because they have all the components and all the weights and everything right there. For us guys that buy ammo off the shelf, just mark down what you're shooting. You can get all that data sometimes right there on the box, if not on the manufacturer's website for sure. If you want to be that methodical and researching it and marking that down on your list, but make sure you guys track your results of your shooting, of your range trips, of different distances, different weather factors, if you want to get that involved, but definitely the distances, the ammo, and kind of keep track of what those rounds did, and so eventually you'll evolve this ledger, if you will, into usable information that you may be able to relate to a different situation, whether you're hunting or whether you just are super into target shooting and even get into competition shooting, or if it ever comes time to have to take a shot at a two-legged creature. You've got all these variables on this sheet that you can quickly reference and know where your gun's going to hit. So I think that's another thing that people neglect to do, is they may go to the range a lot, but if they don't have a way to collect that data and keep track of it, then I feel like it's a wasted trip, because you're not going to remember 2 months ago when you were shooting 150 grain VMAX, where it was hitting, and let's say you can't get that ammo anymore, and so now you're switching to 162 or 168 grain, whatever.
I'll tell you though, I see a lot of guys doing less of that and relying more on the ballistic computers.
Well, no, that's true if you have access, and I guess everybody kind of does with the smartphones and all that. There is a technology out there that does replace the.
Still, batteries wear out. Pen and paper don't.
So that's something to think about. Another thing, you can kind of. I feel like when you're shooting, you can definitely feel a lot from the firearm. Like if you're in a different, like as a human being, depending our situation and where we have to set up for the shot, your body's never going to be in the same place twice. Even sitting on a bench, in a static environment, there's going to be minor adjustments, and you're never going to be in the exact same place twice. So if you can listen to the gun and feel, like if you get, I'm sure we've all shot where like one shot maybe really fucking kicked hard, just felt uncomfortable, versus the second shot that felt a little better and you really didn't feel any recoil. You know what I'm saying? It's like you can tell when that firearm's in the right position.
I think you need both. I think you need to know how to use both because if you do go to, let's say, a different elevation and you've been shooting at 1,000 feet and all your dope is at 1,000 feet, then you're not going to have any reference for 2,000 feet or 2,500 feet or something like that. So knowing how to, A, how to use a ballistic computer, and B, know how that relates to your rifle is going to get you first round hits no matter where you go. So I just see a lot less people spending a lot of time on their own dope. What they do is you compare, you run the formula on the ballistic computer, and then you shoot your gun and you see how close that is so that you can then gauge how accurate that computer is for you and then kind of work from there. Because,
Right.
you know, I'm not discounting.
Right.
keep-
Well,
but
and the other thing, man, it kind of goes along with that while we're talking about gathering this data is some people don't realize how to zero a rifle, like how to, like when you go to zero your rifle, you know, you want to make sure that if you can get, you know, of course, shooters, you know, all of us in here probably know the rule of thumb. You want 3 rounds, 3 consecutive rounds within a 1 inch square or circle or whatever, you know, a 1 inch area. And until you get that, you know, your gun's not zero. And so,
or you can't shoot for shit.
right, you know, and that's, you know, so I think that's a big thing just to start off with is people knowing how to, you know, I've seen guys that zero, you know, we do a free range day at our club for during hunting season, and as a range officer, I kind of help monitor the safety and help guys out with, you know, some of the newer shooters that need help zeroing their rifle, and I've seen guys that take a shot at 100 yards, and if they're one shots maybe, you know, on the, we'll just call it 8 ring for, so you guys can tell what I'm talking about, like on a ringed target. Maybe they're hitting the 8 ring, and then on one shot they might hit the 9 ring, and then on the third shot they might hit bullseye. So then they're like, oh, that's it, I hit bullseye. Well, and they quit. Well, that's ridiculous because that may have just been a lucky shot because the other 2 shots were on the 8 ring and the 7 ring. You know what I'm saying? So you've got to get that. You've got to look for that consistency before you can truly call your rifle zeroed.
And then you have to also think, you know, what you're shooting, the trajectory. So, like sighting in for a 308, you may sight in at, you know, 30 yards or 50 yards, or, you know, 223 at 50 yards, so you don't have to move from 50 to 200. And whereas like a 6.8, you may have to sight it in at 100 yards, or you may want to sight in your 308 at 100 yards. So you have to pick out where you're sighted and make sure that
Right.
your dope and everything is correct.
Right, and especially hold, like for me, I like to do holdovers. I don't ever fuck with my turrets after I'm zeroed. Like, oh, fuck that, dude. I don't mess with knobs.
You're crazy.
No.
Same
Like,
way.
for instance, on my, well, of course, red dots are a little different, but even on my,
But you have to know. I mean, you'd have to know and hold at all your distances consistently.
well, exactly, and but that's what you have. That's what you have. You know, mil dots for. Like, for instance, on my, this is just on one particular rifle. I have a 5.56, and I've got the Nikon M223 scope on it, and it's set up with circles and dashes. And so once you're zeroed dead center, your dots and dashes are like 150, 200, and so on up out to 600. So I just do a holdover.
That also depends on the projectile, because a 55 at 600 yards, 55 grain projectiles is going to act way different than a 77 grain projectile.
Right, exactly.
You're
And
not
that,
shooting long range because 1,000 yards, you'd have to hold a fucking bus over top of your, and you're not even going to be able to see your target at that point. So
That's correct.
generally,
with,
dial
right,
in,
with a 5.56.
you
Absolutely.
dial in
No,
elevation.
even 308, you're going to be, 308 or anything like that. You're going to be holding so far over, you're not going to be able to see the dang target.
So, one real quick note on ballistic computers and then why you should use them together. With just a dope book, you don't know the temperature, you don't know your elevation, you don't know the barometric pressure. Generally speaking, you don't know humidity level. So most of your ballistic computer apps will pull that in, and if nothing else, give you that information for your dope book so that you can use that in your dope book. Because those things do matter if we're actually talking about real long-range shooting at this point. You know what I mean? So I understand, like, holding over and stuff, but I think at long distances, especially over time, like if you're doing an overwatch position and you have to watch your target, then that's something you need to have eyes on and you need to dial in. Why do you think they have like 15 MOA scope bases? And that's because you can't dial in enough elevation into your scopes to compensate for the distances you want to shoot. So they put a 15 MOA scope base that kicks that thing up an extra 15 MOA so you can dial in the proper elevation at the distance so you can actually see what you're shooting at. Now, if you're just like shooting out in the desert in a field at some target and you want to see how much you can, that's one thing. But if you're actually trying to hit what you're, if you have to actively watch the distance you're shooting at, you definitely have to dial in elevation, So, I don't know. That's my thought. I think you should be able to do both. That's all. And trust your scope. If you don't trust your gear, that's a problem too. If you don't trust that you should be able to turn in, and a lot of these also have zero stops. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the concept of a zero stop, but basically, after you set your zero, you can crank that thing all the way up, and you come back, and it will stop at the 0 point. You'll never over-rotate back past zero. So, if that's a concern, look at a zero stop turret, because the way that you set them in a manner that you basically can't zip back past your zero and accidentally go back past it. So I don't know. I'd look into that too. I just don't trust my holdover either. You're talking about such minute, holds and stuff sometimes that I don't know. We just generally dial in for elevation and hold for wind, because wind changes too much,
Yeah, absolutely.
You can't dial in wind, generally speaking.
Absolutely, and that's why I've said that's where shooting and collecting this data and knowing your rounds and knowing your weapon is gonna lend itself well to being able to get first shot on. When you can calculate all these different variables together and put them into action.
But none of this matters if the shooter can't shoot. If the shooter doesn't know.
Absolutely. If you don't know, proper breathing, shooting on the pause between breaths and different things like that.
I'm not as concerned about that. I don't know. I think that's also a little bit of a,
And let's just say it's a hell of a lot harder to shoot at long range than it is to shoot a pistol.
Well, look at it this way. Like, if you only, it's good to shoot on respiratory pause, which is generally what that's called, if you have the time and stuff. But again, imagine you're doing like some Overwatch position in your buddies or whatever, right, and you need to crack that shot whenever you need to crack that shot.
Well, exactly. Then we're talking two different applications. We're talking wartime versus sitting on a range and shooting for bullseyes. Obviously, two different animals there. So
again, I think you should train and try to do both. You know what I mean? Learn to shoot on a respiratory pause if you want. Even down to controlling your heart rate. That's stuff that we used to do. But at the same time, you should also be able to break shots at any point in your. Well, look at IPSC, or look at your competition shooting, right? Like, do you even think about your breathing whenever you're running through?
Oh, hell no.
Right. Okay, so the same thing. Like, it's good if you can do it. And my biggest recommendation is develop your fundamentals on a 22 bolt gun. That's what I do every year. Every year, because I don't shoot during the winter that much, rifle, I start out with my 22 bolt guns. And I pretty much have them set up. I lay in the same positions. I do my breathing, trigger control, loading the bipod, all that stuff with my 22 to get myself back in practice before I start shooting the big gun. Because the fundamentals are the same. They're the same.
Exactly.
Describe loading the bipod.
Okay. So in a prone position or even in a bench, but it's definitely a lot easier in a prone. One of the biggest things, and we're talking about long range shooting here. I'm not talking about 500 yards. I'm talking about 1,000, 800, 1,000 plus yards, where this stuff matters. The biggest thing you need is consistency from shot to shot. Okay, that's the biggest thing. Your rifle has to be consistent. You have to be consistent. Therefore, the position of the rifle or the load you put into the rifle. So if you get on your bipod, you get behind it, then you lean forward to a position to where it puts pressure on the bipod, then that'll give you a consistent position and a consistent pressure to know that you're locked in order to be able to break that shot. You don't really want to shoot from a neutral position, and you don't want to pull back either, because that's difficult as well. If anyone's interested, they should really watch the Magpul Art of Precision Rifle DVDs. They explain a lot of this as well. But bipod loading is a universal thing that you need to do consistently from shot to shot, so that all the pressure that's being pushed in against the stock and all that stuff is consistent from shot to shot. So we're also talking about shooting from a tripod on like a hog saddle, and how those guys actually load those, where they take a sling and they strap it to the gun and then they strap it to their belt. So then they can use their waist to pull back against the rifle and put the rifle in a consistent position in their shoulder, so that they have the same amount of pressure on the gun from shot to shot. It's more important with semi-auto guns. Like, you really, really have to crank into a semi-auto gun to be able to get a consistent shot from shot to shot. Bolt guns is a little bit less, but yeah, loading the bipod consistently is a big deal in order to have the same harmonics and everything else whenever it comes to breaking shots. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
It's basically putting consistent pressure. Yeah, it's basically putting consistent pressure against the gun and putting it in a stressed situation so that you know each time it's going to react the same after you break that shot. If you lay it on something, then how it kicks back and how the harmonic and the barrel whip happens could be different from time to time. So and it's hard to load a bipod from a bench consistently. So that's why I do it from a prone position.
And
Also,
real quick,
depending on your stock, like my Remington 700 is still in the overmolded stock. I haven't gotten a chassis for it. So I guess that loading would help keep that fore-end from hitting that barrel. Correct?
Right. It's going to just give you a consistent amount of stress on the stock, so that whenever you do break the shot, the reaction of the barrel whip stays consistent from shot to shot, basically. So it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be free-floated, but the purpose is to give you a consistent reaction from the rifle every time you break your shot. I'll tell you what, I mean, try it.
Thanks.
Shoot unloaded.
Well,
Start loading your bipod and shooting loaded, and then go back to unloaded, and I bet your groups or positions change whenever you do it.
Well, for me, I mean, the range I want to go to tomorrow is only 230 yards, so it's not extreme, but yeah, I'm planning on going out to 230. So yeah, I'll probably say I'll definitely do that. I'm gonna take 100 rounds with me, so we'll see what I can do.
well, cool guys. I think I'm gonna cut it here. That was a good chat. Stayed on topic, so that was pretty awesome. Some good information. Hopefully, matter of fact, John's a buddy of mine. I've met him a couple times, and we've been trying to organize our schedule. John McQuay from 8541 Tactical. So hopefully we can get together and have him on a chat and
That'd be awesome. I'm a
maybe
big fan of him.
continue this. Yeah, he's a super cool guy, law enforcement officer, and so he's a straight up dude. So anyway, guys, hopefully like I said, we'll continue this later. Maybe expand on this with John and just do a part 2 in the future. So, but I appreciate everybody that tuned in tonight. I appreciate you watching, and thanks to the guys on the panel. And we'll see you next time.